So I asked my viewers for their questions and selected 100 of the ones I wanted to answer. This is going to be one of those videos you can safely put on in the background while cleaning or doing laundry without missing anything visual, though if you're interested in my music taste you'll want to pause the video for song titles when that question comes up. If I sound different, it's because I've been sick for the last week or so, and we're at the stage where I'm coughing and sneezing a lot, so that's fun. With that out of the way, let's get into it, shall we? At Jackhammer124 asked, "What got you into writing?" My mum suggested it to me during a transitional phase when I was younger. It was something to keep me occupied, and it evolved over time into a passion. At HotshotZX asked, "Would you ever critique your viewers' writing?" No. Unless I am already interested in what's being written, I have a terrible time trying to read it, let alone criticize it, so the best I can do is offer advice for an issue rather than direct critique, which leads quite nicely into the next question. At Danganraptor asked, "Do you have general advice for writers and world builders?" 1. You do not have to create everything. At a certain point you're going to have to actually write the story. I know, I'm sad about it too. 2. When it comes to world building, scaffolding by itself can be enough. You can fill in the gaps as you go. 3. This is a personal approach of mine, but I find a good way of figuring out your speculative cultures, races, etc. is asking, what do they eat? Because from there, you figure out what they have access to, if they have agriculture or if they're hunter-gatherers, are they high-tech or low-tech because that plays a part in cultivation, does a particular animal hold religious significance so they don't eat it? You see how that spirals out in a bunch of different ways? 4. As for writing itself, if you find yourself stuck on a certain scene or plot point, the issue can often be found by moving backwards. What's happened up to that point that you don't like? I recently found that issue myself in a story that I was working on. 5. If you get tripped up by having to move characters from place to place or aren't sure what exactly you want the characters to say, put the text in bold and type what you want to happen in brackets. Continue writing and come back to it when you've figured it out. 6. Your first draft can be a truncated, meme-filled bullet point list of things you want to happen in the story in order of appearance. It's more important that you get it on the page than have it all perfectly written the first time you ever let the idea out of your head. At Alicia Grayson 4203 asked, "Are there any games you played as a kid you're afraid to play again now for fear of it not holding up?" I guess Primal? It was a PlayStation 2 game back in the day that I never got to the end of, but I have fond memories of playing it with my best friend at the time, and I'm worried how badly it may have aged. At Carnod Adelhorn asked, "What made you interested in psychology?" A mixture of wanting to write characters better and real-life events making me acutely aware of the fragility of my own mental faculties. At Charles William 6234 asked, "What type of VTM clan do you think is the coolest?" Gangrel. They're basically vampiric werewolves, though I'm aware if you said that to either vampires or werewolves in this setting, it would trigger a war. At Aiden Renault 4278 asked, "Are you a Warhammer 40k fan?" No, I understand why people are into it, and I'm interested in hearing the lore sometimes, but it personally doesn't appeal to me. It is too miserable. I'm generally not a fan of Grimdark. At VSPR Official 00 asked, "If you're taking questions, I've always wondered what your editing process is like. Do you play through multiple times? What goes into writing your scripts, average hours to make a video, etc.?" The process for me is fairly straightforward. I will play the game, go through my footage while I write the script to try and avoid missing anything, and depending on the length it can take 2 to 3 days to edit the video together after I've recorded the script. Something like the infamous video takes like 4 to 5 days because of its length. As for playing multiple times, I would love to do that for certain games, it's just a case of getting the video out in a timely manner. At Poetic Silence 047 asked, "Sylvanas and Jaina walk into a bar. Who is buying you a drink and who are you taking home?" God gave me 2 hands for a reason. At Mateus Felipe Cardoso 40k View 3 asked, 7 games that marked your childhood memories. Crash Bandicoot, Tekken, Spyro the Dragon, Wipeout, Abe's Odyssey, Worms, Ratchet & Clank. At Danganraptor asked, "Are there any videos you regret doing, or at least would redo if given the chance?" Yes, I would redo my Zoocosis video. I was way more lenient than I should have been because I was excited that a team had reached out to me for the first time and I wanted to like it. I liked the concept and I still think the idea could work, but there were some very rough edges to it and the execution needed way more polish. At Hysteria Worships asked, what does your music taste look like? Overall, I think my music taste can be described as moody with a dash of girly pop. Like, most of what I listen to is rock, goth, alt, or dark ambient tracks, but I'll throw some brighter songs in there for gaming playlists and the like. I'm just gonna slap a bunch of songs I like on screen and you can pause and peruse at your leisure. At Sketch Zeppelin 7148 asked, leather, lace, or latex? I don't know if there was a specific context in mind for this question, but leather. At Octavia J7Q asked, what is, in your opinion, the sexiest Pokemon? Unknown, because they can use their bodies to ride erotica. At Spectre76646 asked, if you would change one thing about the gaming or media industry, what would it be? Strong unions that can effectively protect workers from being exploited and cast aside like chaff. Both at Doom7ish and at SpectralGamer135 asked, what's your opinion on Lovecraftian horror? Very cool ideas and concepts that can touch on a variety of different fears and metaphors, while also keying into that specific existential dread of laying awake at night and suddenly becoming a little too aware of your own body. At BylethXVods asked, out of all the games you have made videos on this year, which game had the most impact on you? Cabernet. The message of hope at the end was something I needed to hear. At Squeehead asked, the only question I have is, when will Sylvana return from the war and smooch? Actually, my source inside Chris Metzen's beard tells me they've sneaked away to a beach in the South Sea to drink Mai Tais and make out. At Harry1863 asked, what is your favourite enemy in a video game to fight? I can't really pick out anything specific, so I'll say that if enemies ragdoll when they're defeated, it will amuse me much more than ones that have a preset death animation. At Contrapasso7 asked, what is your view on anime and Japanese pop culture in general? On one hand, I think anime can be an excellent medium for storytelling and visual artistry. On the other hand, I have a very low tolerance for anime bullshit, so finding shows I enjoy is a nightmare I rarely engage with. At Voidaspects9173 asked, any personal projects you're itching for a chance to talk about? Active projects, old drafts, world building, tabletop campaigns, OCs? Only that I am wrangling a narrative thing together that I hope you guys enjoy when it's ready. At Antoine Apollinaire asked, I've always enjoyed your WoW lore videos, and I've always wondered what are your views on Arthas in particular. Despite my love for Sylvanas, I think he's a great villain and a tragic one at that. It's not like I hate him, which I don't think you were trying to imply there. It's just, I think if you're a Sylvanas fan, people kind of assume that you have a very unfair view of Arthas. At ZimaAttack9994 asked, do you still play WoW, and if you do, what was your race-class combo, and what do you think of them retconning Shadowlands? I do not. The whole we almost put a quest in the game where you keep Alexstrasza in the Dragon Maul's forced breeding program thing broke the camel's back. But I mained a Night Elf Fury Warrior, which may be surprising to some because how can I be a Night Elf main and like Sylvanas so much? Easy! The writing quality for WoW has always been a horrific goulash of interesting ideas and wretched execution, with a heavy serving of no, I wasn't surprised by the sexual harassment claims, your issue with women is blatantly obvious to anyone paying attention to your writing. At Tommy T448 asked, how are you? Still breathing, so I'd say good. At Aliada asked, what inspired you to do the Hear Me Out series? Seeing people's Hear Me Out videos going around on TikTok where they had like the cake with the little flags, and that made me wonder what you guys would send me. At Hargrovius asked, do you believe there is a difference between horror for guys and horror for gals? Yes. In general, there's going to be a difference of experience between men and women that is hinged on their gender. Therefore, what most frightens them can be influenced by that. Take something like the first Alien film where a male character is forcibly impregnated with something. That is not a fear the majority of men experience, and it was the director's intention to make the men in the audience feel it. I also think there can be a noticeable difference of approach between horror by men and horror by women, not limited to, but especially in how women are depicted. At Alabaster Giant asked, what's your favorite dinosaur? Spinosaurus, and I do mean the long, low-slung, accurate version, not the Jurassic Park 3 version. They're just goofy, long boys. At Nachtfalke07 asked, what games have disappointed you the most in the past, let's say, 4 years? Unfortunately, Bloodlines 2. At LouisTherian4483 asked, do you have any theatre training? I mean, yeah, sort of. I attended Stagecoach growing up, which is a part-time performing arts school for children. At Deathblight9806 asked, if you had a superpower by choice, what would it be and why? Electromagnetism. See the hour-and-a-half video I made about Infamous. At Trent Simpson asked, if you were given the option to meet any historical figure and slap them in the face without consequences, who would it be? Alternatively, who would you want to meet and befriend? I'll go with the alternative, and it would be Marie Antoinette, partly out of curiosity and partly because learning more about her just made me feel sad. Let them eat cake wasn't even something she said. At Mohammed Syed WP3FV asked, what's your favorite pizza topping? Pepperoni. I'm very basic, but if I'm feeling adventurous, I'll go for chicken and bell peppers. At Willow McClelland68 asked, do you have any favorite books, movies, pieces of non-game media that are criminally underappreciated and that you would like to soapbox about? Maybe not criminally underappreciated because they were beloved children's books, but I do feel like you could make some killer RPGs out of the Redwall series by Brian Jacques. At Johnny Boboni 9306 asked, have you considered VA work? Yeah, and the more I do this, the more I'm interested. I'm just not sure how I'd even get into it. Both Mr. Danger Zone 8362 and at Niels Michel's 1939 asked, what made you decide to do YouTube? It's something I can do to support myself. At Golden Zombie 1991 asked, what's the first game you remember playing and liking? Do you think it colored your taste in gaming much? Crash Bandicoot for the PS1, and I think if it did, it was only in the vein of, wow, this is so much fun, I want to do more of this. At Paolo Paskin asked, what is your opinion on river otters? Adorable and horrifying in equal measure. At Brian Gustafsson 2748 asked, I'm a philosophically driven horror fan. What kind of overused motivation tropes do you find annoying in horror games? Are there any you noticed as a trend? Human bad, so everyone must die just pisses me off immediately and makes me want to shove the villain in a locker like a high school nerd. I'm also not a fan of villains in general who tout something on the lines of, wow, there's not enough to go around, overpopulation bad, as an issue that justifies whatever horrific thing they're doing. It makes me want to gently throttle the author, because the reason people actually starve nowadays isn't because there's not enough to go around, but because capitalism is by design inefficient, therefore tons of food goes to waste every day and never gets where it's needed most, but that kind of villain will always skip over even touching on the system responsible for the issues and go straight to, too many people, gotta kill them. Yes, I thought Thanos' motive in the MCU was insufferable, how could you tell? At Swidsto asked, what is the worst or best game mechanic you have encountered and why? Worst is weapon durability, I just don't care for it. At Blipsio asked, what video game character has the best drip in your opinion? Unfortunately, the character that comes to mind is Emperor Valkorion from Star Wars The Old Republic. I hate this man, but he serves his purpose as a solid villain and he looks very imperious. At TheThing9396 asked, do you enjoy playing a villain or following a villain story? Now, this depends entirely on how it's written. I can enjoy a villain's story, but some things will just not be for me. An easy example is a villain that hurts animals, particularly cats. I can also enjoy playing as a villain, it just depends on what being the villain entails. I'm never a fan of it's XYZ, what did you expect mentality, where a piece of media being horror means you should expect everything from moderate dread to unspeakable things being done to children. Does being a villain mean letting sex crimes happen, or do I have standards? At JustinKuns8845 asked, what's your warm-up routine at the gym? I mean, when I went regularly, it was usually just the walk over, which is probably some kind of exercise sin, but I don't really think about it that much. At 9430U1Q asked, what's your go-to meal deal? If we're talking about UK shop meal deals, it's usually Tesco, and I usually grab a chicken club sandwich, a Monster Energy, and the Grey's Lemon Flapjacks. At Carrot001 asked, what's your I don't want to cook but need to eat food meal? If I have it on hand, a meal replacement shake. If I don't, potatoes topped with cheese and tuna, or microwave rice with whatever sauce or stew I have frozen portions of. At HelloUB8KT asked, any moments in and up to that point either enjoyable or bland predictable games that flashbanged you with how out of pocket or incredibly poorly considered something was? Yes, the rape from Obscure 2. It came out of fucking nowhere and made no logistical sense whatsoever. At Brofisticus asked, amazing name by the way, we've seen you put up with an obscene amount of bullshit on a regular basis. How many times have you abandoned a game entirely due to a truly astounding level of bullshit? The only times I can think of is quitting Warcraft for good and throwing in the towel with Overlord 2 because things just kept piling up and I was done dealing with it. At Stivrith asked, favorite piece of art or media, game, song, book, anything? I am staring directly at the infamous video. At The Dread One asked, do you like the Sonic franchise? If so, what is your favorite game or character? I don't dislike it, I just never got into it. At RuiRip7722 asked, if you could collab with any streamer or YouTuber, who would it be? Probably Totally Pointless TV or Ragnarok's, the first because I feel like our sense of humors match, and Ragnarok's because I just dig his vibe. At Chase2806 asked, favorite spaceship and why? The Normandy, because I loved the Mass Effect trilogy. At Edo Ezio asked, what is your favorite cartoon? Avatar: The Last Airbender is the first thing that came to mind. At Jason Jackson 3455 asked, what kind of analysis videos do you like to do better? Breakdowns of individual games or analysis of themes and trends in games across the industry? Individual games, I actually find it really hard to articulate the more abstract theme videos. At Balratimth asked, how do you feel about game stories where the evil option saves more lives but ends a single person's life? I find it more interesting that such an option is labeled evil because that's the game giving a value judgment on killing one person to save many, i.e. if any innocent has to die for good to happen, then it isn't good. Which is not to say that I agree or disagree, it just depends on how it's done. At Sharkboyok asked, if you could experience a game completely fresh again, what would it be? Knights of the Old Republic. At Deadhead4565 asked, do you read a lot of books? If so, what genre and any recommendations? A lot of it is horror fiction of some flavor or lesbian romance, and often it'll be in audiobook form so that I can do something else while taking in the story. As for recommendations, I'll give you 5. Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. What if mermaids were a realistic species and also horrifying? Really great tension building, sapphic romance, terrifying moments and intrigue, with a spot of both creepy and heartbreaking xenofiction. It also has the most satisfying death of a complete arsehole character I've ever experienced. The Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir. I've never read anything more intensely than these books, nor have I ever wanted to throw my Kindle across the room because the author somehow managed to slip a Nun Pizza Left Beef reference into a conversation. It's about necromancers in space. It's very cool, casually horrifying, might not be to your taste, but I promise it's amazing if it is. From Below by Darcy Coates. The last hour or so of this left me barely breathing. I hated every second of that, and I highly recommend it if you are into underwater haunted bullshit. The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling. 2 women, a handler on a radio, and a caver searching for something deep beneath the surface. There's so much paranoia and suspicion and tension between the 2 characters, and it is so good. There's a part I remember flinching at when reading because the visual in my head was fucking awful. Highly recommend. Dogs of War by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Really, really good xenofiction about sapient biological weapons of war created from animals. It was fascinating, horrifying, heartwarming, and it made me cry. Go read it. At Yominatoful asked, what WoW lore video or videos do you recommend so that we know what you're talking about in your WoW rewrite videos? Platinum WoW has some pretty good videos for lore stuff. At IVTube23 asked, if God is a woman, would you prefer a determinist muscle mommy or a free will girly pop? Only a Sith deals in absolutes, and as I said before, God gave me 2 hands for a reason. At Walking Marshmallow 6895 asked, you've covered a lot of games that are good, bad, unique, boring, and mediocre. What's the first game that comes to mind when you read this question? Demonicon. At Winzeng1235 asked, what is your favorite type of body horror? When someone is transformed into something else that is a functional body, so it's not falling apart or covered in open sores or anything, but it's not human and they can feel the humanity of their mental faculties starting to corrode. At the one and only Handle asked, what is something you've become fixated on recently but haven't had an excuse to rant about until right now, the very moment you're reading this? The Marvel Cinematic Universe. I could insert a ramble here about Wanda and Natasha shipping them and enjoying fanfic and living in Delusion Land because sending Steve back in time was fucking stupid and nothing has space to breathe because what do you mean we completely knocked out Hydra as a threat? Also, it should have been Clint, but we can't sidetrack this video too much. At Battalion 507 asked, what tragic character do you love and would help them up? MCU Wanda, she just wanted to be happy and live a cute domestic life with her family. Fuck. At The Great Glace asked, if you could rewrite and publish one game to live up to the potential it could have, which one would it be? World of Warcraft. At Soratuches asked, what do you think of the Fable games? A lot of wasted potential. At Red Sue1FE asked, favorite survival horror games? Dead Space, Dying Light, and Sons of the Forest. At Mad Cossack 1157 asked, who are your 5 favorite characters? Wanda Maximoff from the MCU, Lana Beniko, Samara from Mass Effect, Sylvanas Windrunner, and Orin. At CruxG228 asked, what are some games and genres you want to explore more often? Big sprawling RPGs, it's just that they usually take way more time. At Mr. Odyssey 8935 asked, if asked, would you or would you not run the Ones, a fight, with the King in Yellow while Nyarlathotep and Cthulhu commentate? 5 minutes of uninterrupted eye contact with your fictional crush is on the line. Yes, what do I look like, a fucking coward? At Reed Cunningham 5906 asked, what horror game has scared you the most? The first Dead Space and its goddamn twitchers, the shuddery rapid movement makes something in my brain start screaming. At Smooth Trooper and at The Real Spidey asked, what's your favorite bird? It's interesting that 2 of you asked this specific question, but crows, they're so silly and clever, but I also like bearded vultures for looking cool and harpy eagles for their dramatic head feathers. At Dramalama BQ121 asked, what are some of the dead giveaways that a voice actor isn't doing a good accent for you? I assume this is about when I cringe at bad Scottish accents. It's hard to articulate sometimes, but with the Captain in Bound by Flame specifically, it was the way he rolled the R in almost every word. To me it came across as trying too hard, so it didn't sound natural. At Your Little Gremlin asked, when you wash your hands, do you put soap on before or after you wet them, and why? If it is a bar of soap, I wet my hands before. If it's liquid soap, I wet my hands after so it doesn't slip on the pump. At Giristobor 1733 asked, have you ever thought of or tried writing your own story or a write-up for a video game? A few times, but I never got particularly far with it. At DJ Devil Sugar asked, what influenced the decision to branch out from Warcraft to more gaming and stories? My disappointment and anger over the Alexstrasza quest, like, yeah, they changed it so we're not keeping her in forced breeding captivity, but the fact that it reached public testing in the first place, after all of Blizzard's posturing about doing better and making changes in the wake of their sexual harassment lawsuit, just made me want to do things I legally shouldn't say, you know, in Minecraft, etc. At Taternug asked, could you describe your ideal sandwich? I mean, you can't go wrong with a tuna melt. At Busboy Jams asked, excluding crystals and gemstones, what is your favorite rock type? Igneous is pretty neat. At Boomslang182 asked, is there a film or book that you'd love to see adapted into a game? Film? Pacific Rim. Book? Into the Drowning Deep. At Anthony Quant Judd 4282 asked, have you ever played Dragon Age Origins, and if you have, what you think? Oh boy, have I. I think the world and writing can be cool at times, but it is severely dragged down by the writers relying way too hard on rape as a story element. I don't care that it's dark fantasy, Because dark fantasy never means men are kept like breeding stock with their Achilles tendons snipped and their arms and eyes removed. It always means violent misogyny, so it just comes across as a sweaty, puerile power fantasy sandbox. And no, that doesn't mean that I want the other thing, but if that description made you squirm a little in your chair, then consider how much I wanted to vacate my body when the entire section with the Broodmother came up. Also, the gameplay is just ass. It's janky as hell, it's not fun, you're just waiting for cooldowns half the time. Veilguard has the opposite problem where the writing is ass, but the combat is the best out of any Dragon Age game. At BLCVK6133 asked, would you ever consider playing Souls-like games? I have tried to play Soulsborne games, namely Bloodborne itself, I just never made it past Farther Gascoigne because I couldn't internalize the lesson the game was trying to teach me and kept dodging backwards when it came to his fight. At All Good Names Are Taken 6145 asked, what is an album you would recommend to your entire fanbase? Not necessarily your favorite of all time, although that's also interesting, just one you want a lot of people to listen to or think they'd enjoy if they liked your work. At The Stake by Rose Garden Funeral Party, it has only 5 songs, but I love all of them. At BritishRex5515 asked, what is your favorite insect? Moths. I just think they're cute. They're like little flying blankets. At Alex Rivera JD8FI asked, have you tried Deep Rock Galactic? If you have, Rock and Stone. I have, it's fun. At HoneyJewel1089 asked, vampires or werewolves, to become or to date? Vampires to both. At Steven2624 asked, who is your favorite Tekken character? King! At TH3HP asked, are you a disembodied voice, a series of emojis, or a collection of Helldiver reaction pictures, or are you all 3? I'm a secret 4th thing. 3 people asked this, at Sir Apple 2406, at Mr. Deathwalker, and at Sporadically Chill asked, why did you choose the name Khanlusa? Khanlusa is an anagram of my trooper character's name from Star Wars The Old Republic when I made an Imperial agent character for an idea where she defected to the Empire. I'm a fucking nerd, in other words. At 6038am asked, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, or Charmander? Pick one. Charmander. At DarkRabbitYT asked, at your funeral, what is the one song you want sung by the church choir? All-Star by Smash Mouth. At More Fun Than No Fun asked, what's a game you know like the back of your hand? I would say the first Infamous game. Like, there are a few times when I had the side quest where you have to look at someone's memory to see where a package is, and I didn't need to check the reference image, because I knew exactly where it was. At Theoden the Renewed 4785 asked, what are your favorite stories in video games? Horizon Zero Dawn was an emotional ride from beginning to end, and every time I hear Homecoming it makes me tear up. At NoSide 2458 asked, what do you think about the fact that every single culture from every single part of the world has had some form of religion? I find it fascinating, and I think it's something to do with our seemingly inherent urge to create things. We like to tell each other stories, it's just that some became much bigger and came to mean much more because it gave the world meaning, definition, and categories. Which isn't to dismiss it as, oh, we just make-believed our way until science came to save the day. I just think it's interesting. At GhostHelix68XX40 asked, how tough are ya? Not very, I bruise like a peach. At Secret of Secrets 739 asked, can you make a review on The Last of Us? Would love to see your take on the first and second game. This is unlikely since the second game in particular seems like an absolutely miserable experience as an outsider looking in. At FazeBaguette09 asked, do you like doing YouTube? Like, actually, do you keep doing it for the passion, the money, or both? Both. I enjoy doing it and I make videos about things I feel something about, but at the same time, we all live under capitalism and bills need to be paid, so if I throw out another video on the stupid anti-woke gaming list, it'll be because it gives my channel a bump and also because I find those people genuinely bewildering. 2 people, at Samantha Knight 8378 and that dude Eric, asked, how tall are you? I am 5'6", or about 167 centimeters, which I believe is average. At Caleb Smith 3259 asked, what is your personal favorite melee weapon in games? I do like a good sword, but if the game gives me a Grim Reaper looking scythe, I'm gonna want it. At Shadow Nemesis 575 asked, with no budget limitations, what Star Wars movie, game, or show would you make and how would you go about making it? An alien isolation type game where you're a ship technician whose ship is still in hyperspace but most of the crew has vanished, and you're being hunted by a Star Weird. At Blue3508 asked, if you could make a sequel for a game series, Resistance Crisis, what would it entail? Please refer to my storyboard video for Infamous, where I wrote up an alternative to Second Son. At Adrian Schcoomby 8573 asked, what are your thoughts on the Stop Killing Games initiative? I'm an avid supporter of it, but I'd like to hear your take on it. I agree that something needs to be in place for preserving games when their official servers are no longer available. Allowing players to keep servers running should be a no-brainer because community support around your game keeps eyes and attention on it. At Your Soraka 5019 asked, in your words, what makes you so intimidating yet keeps me coming back? I think it's because online we only get a very curated look at someone. Even someone who tries to be quote-unquote authentic, whatever that means, is going to make conscious decisions about how they present themselves to the general public. So we end up building an idea of who they are that isn't really accurate. The issue with it is that we're basically trying to do a puzzle with only a third of the pieces and none of the edges, so you can't even begin to form an outline of them. I can come across as confident and sure when I have a script, but when I take that script away, I start to stumble and stall and have these pauses where I try to think of what words I want to use next, where I'm much less sure of where I'm even going with the sentence. So, like, yeah, that's a very different type of flow and presentation when I'm just staring down at my desk instead of my script. All of it is presenting yourself a way that you want to be seen, even if it's not consciously, because obviously someone can interpret the way you present yourself differently than what you were expecting them to. See how much messier that was? Maybe I still made a point, but like, it's not nearly as smooth as when I have a script. However I present myself, I'm glad that the intimidation isn't overpowering because I do want people to feel welcomed and like they're safe here. And finally, at SnowandBlood5801 asked, what's the story behind your new avatar? Looks awesome. Thank you. I wanted something that wasn't copyrighted, and as much as I love my glowy eye Solanas picture, it had to change. So I figured, why not do it when I hit 100,000 subscribers and make it something I can use as a channel avatar, a persona, a mascot, etc. I'm a nerdy goth and find comedy in skeletal features still expressing emotion, and I wanted it to be simple enough that it could be drawn up into poses and memes for video use, so yeah. With all that said, thank you so much for sending in your questions. We'll do this again next year, but until then, I hope you will enjoy the holidays, have a wonderful time, and take extra special care of yourselves. See you next year.